Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Fort Vancouver High School. My name is Jeff Snell, and I'm the superintendent here in Vancouver Public Schools. And we're really grateful that you're here in person. And then we have people that are joining us via live stream. We have a couple of sessions that are being interpreted as well. And then we're video recording this, so some of you may be watching at a later date. And we appreciate you taking the time to engage in this important topic in our community. The session today, for those that are in person here, is going to be a presentation from Sergeant Sofianos. um, and, and then at the end of the presentation, there'll be an opportunity for some questions and answers that he'll make himself available to. We are doing this as a region for our school districts. So in addition to Vancouver, Evergreen Public Schools is hosting an event on Thursday evening. We've broadcasted out to all the different school districts in Clark County. And so if there are specific questions to schools, we will be capturing those questions and then producing a frequently asked question kind of document that reflects all the schools and how they handle kind of the processes that come up. So, and we also want to prioritize Sergeant Sofianos' time this evening. So we also have Jim Gray that's here, who's the Executive Director of Safety for our district. He has a lot of titles, but safety is one of those. And so he'll be also trying to facilitate any of those district level conversations, make sure that we capture those questions and then can share those back with the community after all these series of events are done. So I'm really grateful for Sergeant Sofianos, and this is not the first presentation he's done. We as school districts have really valued the relationship with law enforcement and Clark County Sheriff's Office, and so the presentations have been given to district staff, different community events, and then we thought in order to really honor his time, we would try to collectively get all in the same place at the same time, record it, and make sure that that message gets out, and it's not him going every single night to every single school in the county. But it is a significant challenge right now, and we're concerned. We want to make sure that there's opportunities for families and students and staff to talk about the challenges that Sergeant Sofianos is going to share this evening. And so we're glad that you're here. We appreciate you, and thank you that you would prioritize this evening. So with that, I will turn it over and just express our gratitude one more time. Thank you.
All right. I've been spending a lot of time on stages. It's not something I'm quite used to, but I'm getting pretty good at it. So my name is Bill Sofianos. I'm a sergeant with the Sheriff's Office. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 23 years now. Currently, I'm a patrol sergeant, so I work our swing shift out on patrol. But what led me to this presentation and to make this up for our community is the last almost 6 years I was working in our drug task force. So I was a supervisor of our regional drug task force here in Clark County. That task force consists of the Sheriff's Office, Vancouver Police, and State Patrol. And then we have Homeland Security that helps in certain investigations. You'll see some slides here that kind of show the things that we've been working on the last several years. You'll hear methamphetamine, heroin, cocaine, and then fentanyl about 3 or 4 years ago started to show up here in Clark County. We had heard about it. We had heard it was coming. We thought we were as prepared as we could be. And then what ended up happening was it completely took us by surprise, and it overwhelmed us, and even to this day. And you're going to see the cases we've worked from 2019 until now, and how much time we're spending on certain things. And that should kind of give you an idea of the issues that Clark County is facing. And it's not real specific to Clark County at all. It's all over the United States. But I didn't want to give a presentation on what's happening in the U.S. I wanted you to really understand here in Clark County what we're seeing on a daily basis. Law enforcement doesn't do this very often, where we come out, we give presentations. Years ago it was a big Say No to Drugs campaign and the war on drugs, and that's not what this is. So last year, and it's happened several times, but we've had children die from this drug. We've had juveniles, we've had teenagers. I'll talk a little bit about the overdose deaths that we're going to that are really, again, kind of overwhelming us. And so what I started to see was that there's this thing out here called fentanyl that is killing people. And it's killing people because they don't understand it. They don't respect how dangerous it is. And so we have kids that are dying from it. And I thought we need to educate people. And who better? I'm not a big public speaker, but it's my unit that's capturing this, that's seizing it, that's seeing it. So, you know, who better than us? So that's where this kind of stemmed from, the education part. I don't have my clicker. I'm usually in control. I'm going to do this, and then all right. One more.
My name is Dominic Tierno. Since I graduated high school in 2014, I've had the great honor of directing a number of documentary films about drugs and drug addiction. Our mission is to revolutionize drug education by telling real-life stories that motivate young people to make one of the most important decisions of their life, and that's the decision to not use drugs. 2020 was the worst year for drug overdose deaths that we have ever seen. In the beginning of summer in 2020, I came across this article. A 14-year-old kid from a town I grew up in had died from what appeared to be a drug overdose. He's a smart, funny guy who, like many kids, was struggling with some anxiety issues and decided that he would turn to drugs to see if he could help himself with that. What happened was he went and bought this pill, this Oxycontin pill, from a guy he had known because he thought that pill might ease the pain of what he was going through mentally. Well, he didn't know it, but that Oxycontin pill wasn't a real Oxycontin pill. It was a fake pill. It looked just like the pill that he wanted to try, but instead of Oxycontin, it was made with fentanyl, a synthetic opioid known to be 50 to 100 times the strength of morphine. That one pill he took that night killed him almost instantly, and his mom found him dead in his bedroom the next morning. Before I can even finish that article, I'm scrolling through and I see another linked article. Not far away, around the same time, another 14-year-old dead from fentanyl. So then I go back to Google and I type in fentanyl deaths. I hit search, and then it all made sense. I saw another kid, and I saw high school students, college students, young adults, all recent, all over the country, all dead from fentanyl. And so I'm looking at that and I'm saying, these aren't just normal overdose deaths. These people think they're taking one drug, and it turns out they're being killed. Why have we not heard about this?
So Dominic Tierno made this documentary. It's called Dead on Arrival. You can watch it on YouTube. It's 22 minutes. Go home and watch it. It's very powerful. I reached out to him to make sure he was okay with me putting it in here, and of course he was. So overdose deaths. So that's why we're here. That's what we come here for. Now, like he said, back in the day, drugs, don't use them, you're going to get addicted, all these things. With fentanyl, with overdose deaths, we have responded to under 17 don't understand fentanyl. I think the last few years I'm hopeful that the education part's getting out there. It's become quite a bit more in the public view. But fentanyl is the most dangerous and deadly drug out there right now. And when you think, and I'll show you the pictures of it, it's a pill, and we know that a lot of times kids think pills are safe, they're prescribed by doctors. These aren't those kind of pills. These are pills that folks are making, even here in the U.S., with different amounts of fentanyl, and that's what's leading to these deaths. Go ahead. So we know fentanyl's a real thing. It's used in a hospital setting, and that's not what we're talking about. So you will get prescribed fentanyl in a hospital for pain management. What we're discussing today is illicit fentanyl. So this is fentanyl that primarily comes in the form of powder, and it's being pressed into counterfeit pills, primarily counterfeit oxycodone pills. So what we started seeing back in 2019, up until this date, are these blue pills in the center there. So those are made to look like 30 milligram oxycodone, and they're not. They're fake, and they're producing them by the millions at this point. When we first in 2019 saw these pills, we thought a bag of 5,000 oxycodone pills until we sent them to the lab. So they initially started pressing these pills, so an opioid like heroin and fentanyl, it started with heroin, and they started pressing these pills. Those that use that drug, that use that opioid, will also use fentanyl. So what happened was, because fentanyl is so strong, they slowly introduce this. And initially, people didn't know that it was fentanyl. That they thought oxycodone, until the overdoses started happening. And then people started to realize these aren't real pharmaceutical oxycodones. So this is what we've been seeing. You would think, like I did, as soon as folks started to know, oh, these are fake pills, these are fentanyl, I'm not using those anymore, the exact opposite thing happened. What we started to see is everyone that was using heroin and those kind of opioids quickly got addicted to fentanyl. And so now, and you'll see the numbers, heroin in our area is almost gone. We don't come across heroin almost ever. When we see heroin, we're kind of surprised by it now, because what happened was fentanyl is so strong it took over those users, and so now they've adjusted, and now they're using fentanyl, and that's what they seek out. That's what they ask for. And then you ask yourself, well, why so many overdoses? Why are so many people dying? Let me ask. If someone that uses, let's say they've been using heroin for 6 months, right? And then I just want to go ahead and start trying it now. Do you think I can use the same amount of heroin that that person can? Why is that? Tolerance. Tolerance is a big key. And so it's the exact same way with fentanyl. But when fentanyl is so much stronger than heroin, and when I said that we have gone to these deaths where one pill has literally killed somebody, it's because of that. It's because if you have zero tolerance, and if you're not prepared for it, again, the strength. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So these are all pills that look to be pharmaceutical pills. They don't all contain fentanyl, but the majority of pills that we seize here in Clark County that are in large quantities, distribution-sized quantities, are all fake. They're all counterfeit. They're all being made with substances that are similar, and then they're being sold online, they're being shipped here. So the issue we have right now is you can't tell the difference. You can't test it at home. We send these away to get tested at the lab. The powder up here on the right, so I'll talk a little bit more about this as well. This is where we're going. This is fentanyl powder. So go ahead to the next slide. We got told a couple years ago through some sources that cartels were going to start making fentanyl look like candy. And so if you think about how this started, it started with, and I call it tricking people, right? So you counterfeited pills, you made them look like oxycodone pills, which is, you know, a pain reliever, so users start using it. You get them addicted to fentanyl, because heroin is addictive. It's the most addictive thing out there until this, and now this is even worse, right? So you get them addicted, now they know it's fentanyl. Then we got told we were going to start making it look like candy, And that kind of freaked us out, because if you make it look like real candy, then you can't tell the difference at all, right? Initially, it was to kind of trick the users, and now it's to trick law enforcement. Well, this is now what we're seeing out in Clark County. This is some pictures that the DEA put out. Does anyone know where the pictures came from? This is DEA. They sent it out nationally. Portland metro area. Why do you think we're so popular here when it comes to drug distribution, our area specifically? Huh? Ports, but there's something different. That's been a problem lately. If you want to go to California or Canada, how easy is it here? I-5. So I-5 is a great route to run drugs up and down and money the same way, right? So we've been overwhelmed now with this. So we have recently been seizing this colorful-looking fentanyl. Why would drug dealers, drug makers, make a colorful-looking drug like this? What's that? When I look at this, and so I had a 10-year-old in one of these classes, and she came up to me afterwards, and she said, I thought that looked so yummy. And I'm like, it does. It looks like a sour candy or something, right? To me, it looks good. And then if you think about, you could take one of those and fall over and die. It doesn't make it look so great, but it's colorful and it's happy. The powder up top there, that's fentanyl powder, rainbow fentanyl powder. And when I say fentanyl powder, just to give you an idea, it's kind of like sidewalk chalk. It has the same consistency as sidewalk chalk. So you can break it up, you can pound it down. It's not 100% fentanyl. We'll talk a little bit about how these pills are made. It's the same way. A few grains of fentanyl, again, with someone that has never touched this stuff, you can overdose from, you can die from. So these have very little fentanyl in them, but the problem is we're not dealing with chemists. We're not dealing with people that are making this for lawful production. So go to the next slide. You could get one pill that's packed and one that has very little in. And then the first class I gave, someone asked me, it was a nurse, it was a group of, it was Evergreen School District nurses actually, and they said, have you found any marijuana laced with fentanyl? And I said, no, we hadn't, because we hadn't. But then I did what all good investigators do, and I jumped on, Google. And I Googled it. 6 states had confirmed seizures and overdoses of folks that were using marijuana that had fentanyl laced on it. Why do you think someone would lace marijuana with fentanyl? And this is a dealer selling it to a kid. Addiction. Again, this is one of the most addicting things out there. If you can get someone hooked on this, you have a customer. You have a customer, and they're going to keep buying it until something happens to get them to stop, right? So we haven't seen it here, and honestly, we haven't looked, to be completely honest with you, because we'll go to houses. Marijuana in Washington is, for law enforcement, not that big a deal anymore, right? So we see marijuana, we overlook marijuana, but now we need to start looking at it. And if there's overdoses, we need to start looking at the marijuana. What I would say is, when it comes to marijuana, you can purchase it legally here, you can purchase it in stores. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people still sell marijuana that they grow in their house. There's still illegal marijuana being sold in Clark County. So that's where I would be just a little bit more hesitant, and that's where kids are probably buying that more than they have the ability to go into stores. So where does addiction to this come from? Where do folks start when they get hooked on an opioid? Huh? Yes, prescription. Click, that's my finger clicker. And you can go ahead and click all the way through, it'll make it easier. So the majority of folks we talk to, they get hooked on opioids. It starts with some kind of injury, some kind of accident, and they're prescribed it. What ended up happening back in the day is folks would go through this process, they would get prescription drugs, they'd run out of prescription drugs, they'd be addicted, and heroin was always the next best thing, unfortunately, to these drugs. Now, heroin has been pushed off of the market, and we'll talk about why that is, and now fentanyl is the new opioid. This is the one that we're most concerned with, though. Myself. What's the other way people just start using any kind of drug? Friends, experimenting, trying it out. I'm just gonna try it out for the first time. Fred uses it, I'm gonna use it, you know. Fred seems to have a good time. If anyone in here is named Fred, then it's nothing against you. Right? And so we get folks that it's the experimenting. The problem with this, I've told you we went to 1 pill deaths. The other day we went to a half a pill death. We went to a guy that had never used this before, and he decides, well, I'll just start with that half, and he died from it. And there was a witness there that saw him take that half a pill. I'm not making this up. I'm not trying to scare people. I am literally trying to get this information out so folks know this is not one of those drugs to play with. And we'll talk a little bit more, because there are people that use this a lot. And it goes back to a couple things. One of them being, you know, how often they use. So why? This is the why. Why do cartels, why do these big illegal, you know, drug dealers, why do they go to fentanyl from heroin? Any idea? Cheaper money. Okay, do it. All right, watch that. I did that. I made those dollar signs fly in. I had to Google how to do that as well. Go ahead to the next couple. It's all about money. It's all about money. They're not trying to help people out. So heroin, again, we're talking opioids. Heroin and fentanyl, basically the same thing when to a user, although fentanyl is obviously much stronger. Look at what it takes to produce heroin and to get it to the user, right? It takes fields, it takes manpower, it takes people actually producing this. Back when we were purchasing heroin, it's been quite a while now, and I guess I can tell you what I mean by that is part of the drug task force, that's all we did. We used people to go buy drugs, and then we arrested drug dealers, and so we're constantly buying drugs. We know how much drugs cost. That was what our job was. $15,000 for about a pound of heroin, probably about a year and a half ago. It takes over an acre to get enough poppies to produce that heroin. And then look at the flip side for fentanyl and the profits that can come from it when you're talking about a substance that does not take fields and fields to grow. And we'll talk a little bit about profit, and I always give this away. I'll cover this up. Did anyone already see that? It's going to show on my hand, isn't it? 2019, when these pills showed up, guess how much they cost per pill? One pill. 90? That was a little high, but you're getting there. How much per pill? Huh? 70, a little less, 30 bucks. $30. They were $30 a pill when they showed up here in 2019. How many 15, 16-year-olds are running around with, 30, 60, 90 bucks in their pocket to buy a few pills to blow it on a few pills? Now, and this is, if you're paying $3, I won't call it ripped off, but you're paying a high price. We're buying pills for just over $1 now. $30 in 2019, down to less than $2 right now. What does that tell you about this drug? There is a lot. there is a lot of it here. There's so much that it's lost its value. And so how many kids are running around with $2, $4, $5, $10 in their pocket? It's very available. It's so available and cheap that we've had kids, not necessarily here, but other states, do what I do and Google it, that are finding it on the ground. We've had kids pick up pills and pop them in their mouth. So it's available. It's here. And that's part of the scary part. It's everywhere. It used to be when we had a methamphetamine dealer or a cocaine dealer, that's what they did. They were a methamphetamine dealer. Now, they're a methamphetamine and a fentanyl dealer. And they're a cocaine and a fentanyl dealer. Everybody is selling this drug. Next. Oh. Good. You want to go back for me? That's okay. NPP, and I'm not a chemist, so I can't tell you what that is. But it's DEA, they're the experts, much more than I. So, and what they're saying is China ships this to different countries, primarily Mexico. But I'll go over a pill press that we seized here, just down the road from Hudson Bay High School, where folks were pressing pills here in Clark County. Portland is catching them over in Portland pressing pills. And these, again, aren't chemists. These are folks that are just purchasing this. It's getting shipped in, and they're throwing some binders in and pressing pills right here in our area. Go ahead to the next one. I like to describe it better here. So, chocolate chip cookies. Does anyone not love chocolate chip cookies? Raise your hand if you dare. Okay, so I do. So this is how I put it together, and I don't make a lot of chocolate chip cookies, but I get how you do it. So this is a boring chocolate chip cookie. You can see some of the chocolate chips in there, right? There's probably some buried in there somewhere, but there's a few. And then this guy, everyone in here wants some milk now, right? Because that's an awesome chocolate chip cookie. Then the next, this is a how much do you trust your friend chocolate chip cookie? This is like, I don't like raisins, take a bite, see what happens. But this is the fentanyl pill right now, right? So if I said bite into that cookie in the middle, and if you bite 3 chocolate chips, you die, right? Are you biting into that cookie? There's chocolate chips in there, and you can't see them. So that is how these pills are being produced. You saw it in that first video, that pill press. That's basically what it is. You put fentanyl in there, you have binders in there, acetaminophen, different powders that then are pressed into a pill. And so you can get one pill with one half of the pill has very little to no fentanyl, and the other half is packed with it. Normal pharmaceutical pills are made in a way that you can cut them, right? And if it's a 50 milligram, then half's 25. That's not how these work. So we went to an overdose death where a lady took half a pill, and her husband was there with her, and she took half a pill and didn't feel much of anything. She had never used this before. One of her friends said, I'm going to teach you all about it. I'm going to show you how to do it. So she said, make sure you just take a half at a time. So she took the half, felt nothing. 15 minutes goes by. She takes the other half, and she died from it, right in front of her husband. Side note, those people have been charged federally for selling that pill to that woman. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So this is one of the dangers when I talk about the big couple things that I just want people to take away from this. One is I could buy a bag of these pills and they can all have different amounts of fentanyl in them, right? So just because I'll use a different name, Tony, uses a pill and he's great doesn't mean I will. What's the other reason why? So we're primarily going to these deaths of folks that have either never used this or have used it very little. Not the ones that have been using opioids for years, right? So we already said tolerance. What's another reason why you think that we're not going to those deaths, that those folks aren't dying? They're prepared. They're prepared. Those folks, they use it in pairs. They have a counteracting drug called Narcan or naloxone with them. And they know, and they'll tell us. Another part of our job in the Drug Task Force is to talk to folks that are involved in using these kind of drugs. And they'll talk about how many times they've had to revive their friend after they've overdosed. And so they're ready. We'll go into houses. We'll serve search warrants in houses, and they have naloxone, and we'll talk about naloxone at the end, taped up in their room so that when they overdose, they can quickly help their friend. What we're finding is, and the deaths that we're going to are, all deaths are tragic, right? What we're finding is these are folks that have either never used the drug, were tricked into it. We're seeing kids. Where are kids, high school, middle school kids? We know they're using this. We know some are. We've seen them overdose. We've seen bad things happen. They're not using it with friends. Some will go hide away and use it. They're not prepared. They're not prepared like those that are very experienced with this drug are. And so those are the folks that we're seeing that are overdosing from the drug. Which of these is accurate? Is fentanyl a kind of a party drug, or does it kind of knock you out? Yeah, it's this guy right here. How do people die from this drug? Slows you down so much, you just quit breathing at some point. You just quit breathing. So that's kind of what it does. All of the overdoses we've gone to, it's not a immediate death, but it's an immediate you go out. So it's not like I use this and then 10 minutes later or 15 minutes later I get the effects and then I'm out. We have seen this is you use it and you just fall down. So I like to point that out because especially when the colorful stuff came out, to me at least, it made it look like, oh, it looks like yummy fun stuff. And then I could have done this whole thing off of Google. You can go all the way to the end. So in our area, we have had, in the Portland metro area, high school age kids, young adults, mid-20s, overdosing from this. What I like to put out to, especially to high school age kids, because I didn't know this when I was going through high school. I always wanted to do this job. Luckily, I never sold drugs, so I'm good. But what I like to put out to kids, right now, one of the main things we're doing is we're going after those that are distributing this drug. So it's called a controlled substance homicide. If you deliver a drug and it kills somebody, you can go to jail or prison. And so one of the things that we've been doing, the Drug Task Force rarely responded to these overdose deaths pre-fentanyl. They happened, and I'll show you the overdose numbers, the death numbers here in Clark County, and you'll see how they've really skyrocketed. We're going after the folks that are selling this drug. So if you are anywhere in that chain, you can be held criminally accountable for it. So if you're at school and Tommy hands it off to Sally and Sally hands it to, I come up with all these names. I put a Y at the end of every one of these names too. I don't know why it is. Right? Anywhere in that chain, you can be held accountable. And that's what happened on the one woman who passed away. Two different people. It was two different levels that got federally charged with her death. And then that's our, that's our group that we're concerned about, under 24. Doesn't it blow you away that we still have this age here, right? So why do you think this is? We're up in our 80s. So here's what I'll tell you. So I worked at the jail for a few years, talked to a lot of people with addictions. I come out on patrol, I'm talking to people. Heroin, opioids is like no other drug out there. There are a lot, and not that, with other drugs they're not good people, but I have met a lot of people that hold decent jobs that this is like a medication once you start getting into this type of drug, and it just latches onto you. And that's where the addiction is so incredible. And when you start talking fentanyl, it multiplies it. And now our group there, under 18, are the ones where they either don't know about fentanyl, they've been tricked into the pills, they don't know what's in the pill, and now we have these colorful ones that are popping out. And it just kind of is able to grasp onto those under 18. So this is Clark County. This is what some very, very little of our seizures here in Clark County. This is the pill press that we just seized. How many pills do you think that upper left-hand corner? Kind of hard to see it, but how many pills do you think are there? 10,000, not a million. That'd have been awesome, but we did not get a million. 40,000? That's 100,000 pills. 100,000 pills, that was, I think that was earlier last year. So about $500,000 in pills that we got out here. The pill press was in this trailer. They were pressing pills for about 1.5 years here in Clark County. And again, when we seized this, it was just down the road from Hudson Bay High School. Yep, they could have taken it anywhere. The whole inside of that trailer was covered with fentanyl powder. The group you saw there, Washington State Patrol, has a lab team. It's like meth labs, right? Everyone remembers hearing about meth labs. Meth labs they've gone away. We haven't had meth labs in a very long time. Meth is even cheaper. We were buying meth several years ago for $1,000, $1,200 an ounce. We're buying it for $100 an ounce right now, $150. So meth labs have kind of gone away, and now we're on to fentanyl labs. So that's what we're seeing more of now, are these labs that are pressing fentanyl. So those folks with the lab team had to go in completely suited up because where you worry about an overdose, and that's where we'll talk here, like an unintentional one is from having it in the air. It's not holding it. We used to think when fentanyl first came out, we thought, don't touch it, don't look at it. If you look at it, right? But certain forms, it's in a pill form. The fentanyl's in the pill. I'm not saying to just pick up, pills. If you have cuts, it's going to get into your system. But the primary way that you accidentally overdose on this stuff is when it's in the air. So our issue now becomes the powder. Our issue now is the powder. And the powder is starting to kind of push the pills out of the scene. And so we're going to start to see a lot more of this powder. So this drug is used by heating it up, turning it into smoke, and then inhaling it. So signs to look for. Where should you find tinfoil? Kitchen, good one. Yes. A what? In a container, perfect. The store's a good one. How about your 14-year-old kid's backpack? I mean, if they got like something going on at school, they're right. What else can you use tinfoil for? Food products. Yes, exactly. You make hats, and that protects you from aliens and things, right? But if you're finding this in pockets, that should lead to some other questions. If you're seeing it with these black stripes, then that's drug paraphernalia. Unless you had some food wrapped up, right? But in a backpack, in a pair of pants, if this is what you're seeing, this should lead to more questions. We've had 2 folks so far. We've taken apart 2 vape pens, and they're putting their fentanyl in the vape pens, and it's got to be a specific kind of vape pen that can take it. I'm not a big vapor. I won't say I didn't try it once or twice. So, then that leads you to, well, gosh, you're blowing this smoke. Once the substance is burnt and it's in your system, there's less to worry about. 2 days ago, I stopped because I saw someone smoking drugs in their car, and I thought it was meth. And I opened the door, and the smoke came out and just nailed me. And I was like, that didn't smell like meth. And it was fentanyl. She was smoking fentanyl in her car. I got freaked out from the smoke. It didn't affect me because it's already, it's in her. So we're talking about pure fentanyl that's in the air is what you have to worry about. Left-hand corner, pen without the ink in it. 2 things that you would use that for. Spitballs. Have you been in one of my things before? Okay. Spitballs, yeah, you shoot those things out of that, right? Well, the other thing is to inhale the smoke off of these. So again, you could use it probably for 4 or 5 other things I don't know about. These are things that start asking questions if you're seeing these signs. This is just paraphernalia to kind of be on the lookout for. It reacts stronger and quicker than just swallowing it. So you're going to get some folks that do just swallow it. I've yet to meet anyone that shoots this up. I think that at least they've drawn the line there just based off of how dangerous it is. But the smoking it just gets it into your system quicker. No. Yeah. So years ago, the pharmaceutical companies put binders in pills to stop you from being able to melt it, because that's what was happening. Folks were smoking their real pharmaceutical pills. So they put a substance in there, you couldn't melt them anymore. They're not putting that in this because the primary way to do it is to melt it. So that's the tin foil, and then they heat the bottom of the tin foil and it melts the pill. Yeah. Different names to look for, blues 30s, M30s, Fenty powder. I can't even, there's probably 12 more new apps out there. The point is the communications are happening over social media, and we started to see a lot more payment via those digital currency apps. So if you have kids, this is something you really have to keep up on. Yes. That's a great question. So he asked, do you think it would be hidden in things that you might use for cooking or maybe even candy packets? So last Halloween, they caught a group smuggling the colorful fentanyl in packets of candy. They had emptied the candy out. They had put their colorful fentanyl pills in there, and that's how they were transporting it. So no, you're not going to go to like the store and have to worry about it, but you do have to just pay attention that way. I don't think that's going to be real common, but that did just happen. So this is what we've done here in Clark County, to give you an idea. I have a couple slides that will kind of hopefully show you where we're at with this. So 2019, methamphetamine and heroin were our big cases. That's really, we spent all our time on methamphetamine and heroin. Fentanyl at the time, 4% of our cases was 2019. Half of it, we didn't even know it was a fentanyl case for a couple months until the lab actually told us. And then fast forward to the end of last year, and you can see where fentanyl has now become the top issue here in our area. Part of this is actually deceiving as well, because I said meth dealers or fentanyl dealers, and right? So just because meth took up 28% of our time doesn't mean that they also didn't have fentanyl, because a lot of them did. Not all of them, but a lot of them. But fentanyl basically took over what we were doing. We went from 54 heroin cases down to 12 of all of last year. And like I said, when we see it now, we're just kind of like, gosh, why do they have fentanyl? Or why do they have heroin? We talked to the folks that moved to fentanyl, and they say they just don't go back to heroin. So it's kind of on its way out. Yeah, it's become so minimal as far as, well, we're not coming across real prescription pills being sold. Not to say it's not happening. Just with the drug task force, we go after the much larger groups that are selling larger amounts of pills. So we go after the ones selling the thousands instead of, the little here and there. And this kind of gives you an idea over that last 4 years. What happened in these 2 years, 2020, 2021? COVID. I did not get to stay home and not work, so we were still out here trying to look for drug dealers. But an interesting thing happened when COVID hit, and I only talk about kind of what happens here in Clark County, but I'll tell you what we saw in Clark County during that time. We were having a hard time finding drugs. We were having a hard time finding large quantities of drugs. Why do you think that is? Drug dealers were not working from home. Supply. We had folks that we knew were heading south to California to bring drugs up. They couldn't get the drugs. Shipping lanes were closed, and all those things made it very difficult. And we saw just oh gosh, I was gonna say I have to use my voice. Go ahead. But now fentanyl is again where we're at. So this is our overdose deaths. 2022 is not here because it takes months to get results from toxicology and things of that nature. I think it was probably 4 months ago, the last I heard, we were around 45, but I know there are a lot of pending deaths, so I'm going to gamble and say we're probably higher than the 57. But that's pretty amazing, from 13 to 57 in a couple years. They don't put ages on this, especially when we're talking juveniles. So you can't get on and say, this many 18-year-olds or 20-year-olds overdosed and died from this drug. But this is Clark County, 57 in 2021. And then you can kind of look at the population of our other, counties here in the state, and we kind of fall, pretty equal there based off of our population here in Clark County. Yes? The feeling of using the drugs. So heroin and fentanyl are downers, so they calm you down, they bring your body down. Meth brings you up, and you, for some reason, want to take apart VCRs and things like that. And I don't know, that's a side effect I've just heard of. But so Meth makes you kind of bounce around. You'll stay awake all night. Heroin, fentanyl is more of a downer. Why? Yeah. Right. That's what it does to your body. Yeah. Yeah. It relaxes your body so much that your body just stops breathing. Yeah. I don't know. I have not seen where folks are purposely using this to die, but it definitely could. Just like any other large amount of a drug, but it could, yeah. Those were more users, not, looking to overdose. So we'll talk a little bit about this, and we'll talk about naloxone. Anyone not heard about Narcan or naloxone? It's okay. I didn't know about it till, I had to. So we have a hard time testing this drug out in the field. So it's even harder for folks to test it. I'll tell you right now, if you go out and buy blue pills, they're not real pills. They're fentanyl pills. So as you see those out and about, unless it's out of a cabinet and you're prescribed it by a doctor, these fake oxys are all over the county. I already talked a little bit about the unintentional overdose, the accidental overdoses, as far as picking something up. That's not as much of a concern as if it was crushed or in the air. And then Narcan and naloxone. So good stuff, but also a problem. So heroin, when we would Narcan someone using heroin, 1 or 2 doses might stop that overdose. So the only thing with these opioid overdoses that's going to stop it is Narcan or naloxone. You can give Narcan and naloxone to someone having a heart attack, and it's not going to hurt them. For different medical issues, it's not going to help them, but it's not going to hurt them. So a lot of times when medics now, AMR, show up at a scene and someone is out, they'll give Narcan because they don't know, and it doesn't hurt. The issue is it can take a lot of Narcan to counteract fentanyl. It can take, once they're transported to the hospital, a lot of times they'll put them on a Narcan drip. So it's actually keeping that overdose from happening again. So this is something that we've seen where someone, and even school districts with over a couple thousand schools in Washington have to have this. But there's not like you have to have this many doses. And so that's one thing that we've kind of seen. And in every school district I've been to, they have this available. But the problem is, if you rely on 1 dose or even 2 doses, you still might not have enough. So it'll wake someone up, and then they might go back into that overdose. So next slide, I'll show you how to get it. So you can get online and order it for free at that site there. They'll send it right to your house. It comes in packages of 2. If you have, you don't even need someone high risk in your family or that kind of concern. It doesn't hurt to have it in your car. So many minutes. He cut me off. If it doesn't hurt to have in your car, doesn't hurt to have in your first aid kit, Narcan and naloxone. But then the worst news, because I always like to end things with real bad news. Go ahead. All right. Xylazine. Anyone know what this is? The definition's there, but spat it out without knowing. Okay. So California has recently started seizing fentanyl with xylazine in it. So xylazine is and again, I'm not a chemist. I just learned this as I go. It's a tranquilizer used by veterinarians, and it has the same effects is an opioid, but it's not an opioid. So they've been mixing it with the fentanyl, putting it in the pills. It makes the effects last longer. But what's the problem if it's not an opioid? Narcan doesn't work. Narcan doesn't work. And I just went to a conference this last year, and they are seizing this. They are finding this in their pills. If it's happening in California, then it's here. I mean, we are getting the same pills that California has. So this is another layer of, this is bad. This is real bad. Fentanyl's a nightmare, but this is really adding a whole nother kind of layer to it. We haven't heard yet if our lab has actually seen this in any pills, but if something's happening in any state, it makes its way around the U.S. So, especially being as close as California is to us. All right, so this will be our last slide.
There's always been one
and then we'll open it up to questions. No, go ahead. You roll.
Problem with the films that we make. And it's the reason why we try to keep them as real and as relatable as possible. People just so commonly think that it will not happen to them. I'm talking about great people, nice people, cool people, intelligent people with big plans for the future, big potential. Gone because of one choice they didn't know would end their life. Fentanyl is coming for anyone and everyone. So the most important message that I can give to kids, to teens, young adults, anybody, is the same old message we've heard time and time again. And that's to really get serious about not even trying a drug. You see, back when we first started, I was telling kids not to use drugs because you might get hooked, you might get addicted. Now there's not even time for that. Now it's don't try a drug because you might actually not wake up tomorrow. You might actually not get another chance. One choice is all it takes. If you don't believe that, I guarantee you, at this point, there was someone very similar to you who wished they could be here right now to look into the camera and look into your eyes and say, don't do it. Please don't do it. Please, I wish I wouldn't have done it. Don't do it. Don't risk your life. So my question for you is, are you going to listen? Or will it be your family and your friends holding your picture, wishing they could have been there to tell you?
This is my son, Alexander. He died at 14 years old from fentanyl poisoning.
This is our daughter, Jessica. She was 29 years old when she was killed by fentanyl.
This is my daughter, Alex. She was murdered at 20 years old by a drug dealer who sold her a counterfeit pill made of fentanyl.
This is my son, Daniel Joseph Puerta Johnson, killed at the age of 16 by illicit fentanyl.
This is my son.
All right. If I had one wish, it would just be that this drug just went away. I can't express to you enough what it does to us and to the families that this affects. In our line of work, we see a lot of really horrible things, but I'll tell you, I've been into some houses where I walk in and I think, gosh, this looks a lot like my house. This looks a lot like, my kid's room, and it's heartbreaking. It has been very heartbreaking to see what this drug is doing to our community. So I think education, I'm very glad that you're all here. It tells me that you care and you want to know about it, but you really have to pass it on. You really have to talk about it. kids need to tell their friends, and I hope if you're at a party, if you're hanging out, and out comes these weird-looking pills or colorful stuff, you say no, and you educate others on it as well. So that is what I have. Does anyone have any questions? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So what I've been doing is I've made this available. Every school district has I've spoke to every school district. Every school district, there's not been one that has said no, we don't have a problem. No, we don't want to do anything. And I'll tell you, in my experience, that's somewhat rare. I used to be a school resource officer out here, and some dude like to turn a blind eye to things. So I will say, not one school district has said we don't have a problem. Every school district is tackling it differently or their own way. I've only done it, this presentation, to a room of students once so far at Washougal, but there's 2 other districts that are having me over the next couple months. So it's not this long of a presentation. It's about cut in half. It's just kind of to the specifics of the drug. But kind of like he said when I first got up here, I'm all about putting this info out. I also am making it available to the schools, though, so they can kind of do their own, and they might even have their own thing they're doing. They don't need me to come in. They don't need this presentation. So I don't know everything the school districts are doing. I just saw a need based off of what you just said happened, and that's why I just put this together and say, hey, let's just get something out as quick as we can, and then we can build from there. So I've been very pleased that every district has stepped up to do something. And, for some people it might never be enough, but I am happy that we're at least talking about it. So, but I agree with you. We want students to hear about this, yeah. Dead on Arrival. Dead on Arrival. One pretty cool thing, it's kind of hard to find on YouTube. A school in California played that 22 minutes for their high school. They have it's kind of a neat deal. They do in the morning, kind of like a little news crew, and they talk about what's happening for the day. And they said, we've got the dance later. Don't forget to get your tickets, and we're having the football game. And then they said, oh, and our area has the highest rate of fentanyl overdose deaths in their valley or whatever. And then they played that whole thing for their high school. It was kind of a neat way to do it. I don't know if people get more from hearing law enforcement talk about it, or themselves, or teachers, if there's buy-in or not. But anyway, that's what I've been doing, and the districts have all been very open to doing something. No one has said no so far, and I talked to them all. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a way to test individual bills for whether or not fentanyl?
So I've seen some aftermarket stuff that folks have been buying, that users have been buying. So I'm sure that there's something out there that is now available. I think you probably could find stuff online. Whether or not it works, I'm sure people are just selling stuff to make a buck, but whether or not it works, I don't know. We know that cocaine is one of the highest drugs that this fentanyl is being cut into, is cocaine. And so we have some folks saying that they're cocaine dealers testing it for them. But then we've had a couple overdose deaths from cocaine and fentanyl out here in Clark County. So I wouldn't trust any, internet purchased test kit. Oh, yes, sir. How about you?
Quick question. How many incidents, if you keep track, have occurred in the Vancouver School District, for example? I know there's been one very tragic death
No, I don't know. I don't know. No. Law enforcement, gets involved to a certain extent, and it's not always if someone, especially if someone survives and it's an overdose where they've survived, then we're trying to make some changes to that, especially when it comes to kids, to juveniles that overdose, whether they survive or not, that at least the sheriff's office responds and then starts trying to figure out where they got it and things like that. What I'll tell you, and this isn't a, we need more officers thing, but we need more officers. We can only do so much, and so it's horrible. We want to spend all our time on this. My unit, the drug task force, is down to 3 detectives right now, and so they have a lot of work to do, and so they can't do everything. There's priorities, but this would be my priority, but we have a whole lot of other things to do. So I don't know the numbers specifically. Yeah. That's what DEA has come out and said, yeah. Here's our objectives. To make selling drugs in Clark County uncomfortable, because selling drugs isn't going to go away, and we're not going to be able to stop it, and we're pretty aware of that. But years ago, when we were talking about the methamphetamine cases, we were seizing 300, 400, 500 pounds of methamphetamine in Clark County, and what that did, because we heard it from the suppliers, it got them to stop short of Clark County and do their business in Oregon. And I'm sorry for Oregon, and they have great drug units as well. So we try to do what we can to make it uncomfortable and make them not want to do that kind of business here. But it goes without saying, going from $30 a pill down to $1.50, it's a hard problem to solve. Right. Yeah. The suppliers that we're getting here are definitely 2 to 3 levels away from the primary suppliers that are sending the drugs here. Yeah. So we're just kind of batting things away little by little. Yeah. Are people doing what? Finding worse drugs? Well, unfortunately, I bet you there'll be something worse than this someday. You never think it's going to happen, but right now this is our biggest issue. Yeah. So he asked if we're only doing it in Vancouver or other places in Washington. So what we do is all of Clark County, so that's Vancouver and Camas and Washougal, so all in this area. But there's units all over that do the same thing that we're doing in Washington State and Oregon, all the other states. Yeah.
You mentioned that people should get this out to family members. We have another presentation coming up at Evergreen School District. Have you talked about that?
Yeah, I got talked about a little bit here in a couple days on the 9th. Yeah, at Evergreen High School, right? Yeah, same time, 7 o'clock, and there'll also be a Spanish presentation at the same time. Ma'am, yes. So here's what I'll say, because it is very easy to, politicize this issue. I'll tell you the facts as I know it. When there are times we're ordering this drug and we're ordering it from Mexico specifically, and and that doesn't mean Mexico's bad. That doesn't mean, that means there's bad people there making the drug and shipping it here. I don't have control over that. Again, I have control over here. So what happens there, 2 levels above my pay grade. We just try to do what we can here. The education part of it, with a lot of other drugs, we haven't done much. So that's what we're trying to do now. If we can stop people from wanting it, then great. That's, I think that's what we have to do here. Stop people from wanting it, have systems in place to help those that are using it, and just do what we can here, because we can only control what we can control here. But yeah, that's where we end up ordering it from, primarily California is where ours comes from, California and Arizona. As long as people want it. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so if it's 50 to 100 times more addictive than the opiate,
Heroin, yeah.
and you're saying that some of these people are they're pressing it into pills. They aren't really keeping track of how strong those pills are. So that's kind of the danger. If someone's taking one of those pills, they might be getting one that's got a very low dosage or a very high dosage, right?
Correct.
And even though it's a low dosage, it's still 50 to 100 times more addictive, right?
Right, yeah, as strong.
So if you have one of those pills and you survive, we had it, you survive, and you go, oh, okay, I felt good, and so you're going to try to get another one. This time it's maybe a lot higher dosage. That's what the problem is, because you never know. It's not made in a lab.
Correct. So there's no quality control with this, with the illicit fentanyl, correct? So it's made in those pill presses and now in the powder. There's only so much mixed in. So one bit could have a lot, one could have very little. So yeah, it's a gamble. It's a very expensive gamble when you're talking about your life. Yeah. How about you in the back again? What do you got? I will tell you that, so I don't have any friends and family that have passed away. The other deputy that's here with me today, he's doing another presentation down the hallway, Russian speaking, and he had I believe it was his cousin, 20-year-old that passed away. What's really surprised me in every presentation I've done, I've probably done maybe 15 or more at this point, for just a varying types of groups, someone always has a story. Someone always has a story, just like you already heard in here. And so whether it's a child or a friend, someone has been affected somehow. So yeah, no, I have not. Anyone else? Yes. Yeah. So our task force here is what's called a HIDTA task force, high intensity drug trafficking area. So because of I-5, so there's so many of them in Washington and all throughout the U.S. They have different ways that are partially funded through Congress. So our task force gets some money to combat drugs in our area. We talk with not only the other task forces, but the smaller units. I mean, so we are constantly working together because we have to. I mean, we all have very, very few people to put towards it. We cross the bridge constantly, way more than I like. Yes. And it always seems to be the worst traffic time. We are constantly, the drug dealers live there, they live here, they sell on both sides. So the two I talked about that were federally indicted lived in Oregon and sold to someone here in Clark County that died. And so we used our federal component to arrest and charge them in Oregon. Yeah. Appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else? Oh, yes. There is. There is a law that you can't sell drugs across borders. Very good. So we try to arrest those people. How old are you? We got another 12 years or so before you can. 10, okay. 11 years, you could be up here. We're recruiting. Good questions. Anything else? I'll hang out for a few minutes. If anyone wants to just come up and talk one-on-one, feel free. All right. Thank you all.